You're telling me that this kid who's not military trained, this guy, first of all, how did he get to the roof? How come nobody was looking? How come nobody was like, there's a direct line of sight between where he's sitting and those roofs? You guys didn't check? You don't have a drone? Like, that's insane. So he's on the roof, he shoots, he jumps from the roof. He jumps down 14.
The FBI is hunting a second shooter in the Charlie Kirk assassination, and they already know who it is. That's not some late-night Reddit post or a stray tweet from the usual suspects. That's the story exploding on every screen minutes after the viral footage. A figure in tactical black pacing across the roof, moving with military precision, never once looking down. He's not Tyler Robinson, at least not the jeans and t-shirt Robinson that Utah police walked out of the student union hours later. Robinson is 22, looks like he just came from a campus IT job, and according to the official story, he's the only gunman. Except the eyewitness, whose phone caught the shooter on the roof, told authorities in real time that the man was fully geared up, head to toe, looking like someone out of a bank heist, not a college dropout running late for final. No random bystander, no campus security, nobody saw a kid in Levi's scrambling up a maintenance ladder in broad daylight. Even Joe Rogan couldn't keep a straight face, asking his audience how did nobody see a man in black on a roof in broad daylight. Rogan's got a point. Either this is the world's first invisible college shooter, or someone is selling the public a whopper.
In a way that, like, okay, you're saying something that's actually factually inaccurate, right, according to the narrative. Now, let's be real clear. I don't necessarily think they know what's going on yet. There's a lot of weird going on.
Now, Candace Owens has her own gasoline for this bonfire, and she's using a flamethrower. On her podcast this week, now charting at #2 behind Kirk's own memorialized show, she tells her audience the FBI is leaning on Utah law enforcement to close the case as a lone wolf operation, no questions, no threads, just wrap it up and stick a bow on it. Owens claims the Bureau's language is simple. If you don't close the case against Charlie Kirk and rule it a lone gunman, then it might mess up our prosecution against Tyler Robinson. But then, if it's so cut and dried, why all the panic over surveillance, loose ends, and now a $100,000 reward for someone they allegedly can't even describe properly? Insiders familiar with the situation say the FBI knew exactly who they were looking for hours after the shooting. So why the charade? Why the distraction? We don't have to speculate much because the evidence trail is a carnival in its own right. The bullet casings pulled from the scene read less like evidence and more like graffiti in a spy novel. Oh, bella ciao. That's not just a random meme, it's a calling card for anti-fascist symbolism, an Italian partisan song from another century. The other, hey fascist, catch? If that's not a taunt, it's a signature. Prosecutors say Robinson doesn't even speak Italian, let alone quote 20th century resistance anthems in the middle of an escape. The third casing, as relayed by sources who have seen the forensics log, said, if you read this, you are part of the rainbow community, LMAO. That's not just odd, it's brazen. A joke? A threat? A feint? We're supposed to believe a nervous third-year electrical apprentice, sweating bullets on the roof, left behind 3 personalized Easter eggs for the internet to feast on?
You get some kid who has a boyfriend who's a furry, and you talk to him on Discord. I think he's a furry. I don't want to disrespect.
I don't know if that's a real thing.
His boyfriend's definitely a guy who became a girl.
And wears furry stuff.
I think they do furry or furry games, excuse me.
Rumors started fast. Industry sources claim the FBI's $100,000 reward for a person of interest in tactical gear was nothing but a distraction play, dropped onto cable news to buy time while the Bureau's top brass quietly moved their own assets around the case. By the time the press conference was scheduled, the real suspect was already in the wind. Or, if you ask the hardliners, already in custody, somewhere off the grid. The network hasn't commented, nobody's going on the record. Meanwhile, construction crews showed up on that campus rooftop within 72 hours, long before the all-clear from local police. They were seen pressure washing the surface, hauling out equipment, even removing chunks of the roof membrane. A university spokesperson called it scheduled maintenance. But the security logs showed no work orders until after the shooting, and the timing has locals buzzing. As one campus contractor put it to us, off the record, why scrub a roof unless you're hiding something?
Like, the more they keep looking into it, the more they're like, this doesn't feel like a real... It feels super fabricated.
But here's the thing. Just like I was talking about when people are arguing on social media, it's all part of the plan. If you want...
That's not the only anomaly on the playbill. Let's talk about the roommate. Governor Spencer Cox, eager to play down speculation, went on record to confirm that Tyler Robinson's roommate, transitioning from male to female, according to his terminology, was shocked by the shooting. What Cox didn't say is that this same roommate was the person who actually called campus security, reporting a shooter on the roof. Their description didn't match Robinson. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity, at least not if we trust the transcript from campus dispatch. The roommate described someone in full tactical gear, moving fast, with a weapon that forensics later said didn't even match the one police took off Robinson hours later. This isn't just a hole in the story. It's a crater. Discord leaks only threw more gasoline onto the pile. A group chat attributed to Robinson and his roommate was released by prosecutors in Utah, publicly no less, as if transparency alone would douse the fire. In the leaked messages, Robinson jokes about being framed by a doppelganger. Then, as the FBI reward flyer hits X, he drops a line about splitting the money if he gets turned in. Candace Owens, who knows a thing or two about manufactured outrage, called the entire exchange so federally written, it reeks of scripting. But she's not the only one crying foul. Even skeptics on the left admit it reads like an LA law script, not a panicked message between friends in crisis.
And I want to be very clear that I believe, in fact, I know that towards the end, Charlie was fighting for custody of himself. I want to say that. I want to say that plainly, and there are lies that are being told and they need to be slapped down right now.
Meanwhile, Kash Patel, Trump's chosen FBI director and now a household name among the right-wing podcast crowd, amplified the roommate's identity on X before a single formal charge was filed. Why would a bureau chief risk confirming personal details that the prosecution hadn't touched? If this was standard procedure, it's news to every legal analyst watching. Some say it's a move to control the narrative before local law enforcement could go off script. Others argue it's an attempt to preempt what could be a much bigger story, that the real shooter, whoever they are, was meant to vanish behind a smokescreen of culture war spectacle. None of these details add up in a straight line. There's the weapon, allegedly a World War I era rifle, the kind you see in museums, not active shooter cases. According to the FBI, Robinson disassembled it, stashed it in a backpack, then reassembled it during the escape, all in the space of a frantic campus lockdown. Rogan had a field day with this, asking, do you know how much time it would take to disassemble a rifle so that you can get it in a backpack? The answer from federal officials? Silence or a rehearsed no comment that says more than any press release. And then there are the roof access logs. As of now, every single entry and exit from that rooftop on the day of the shooting remains classified. We know campus security keeps those logs tight. There's a camera on every fire door and a swipe card for every maintenance crew, yet not a single timestamp, not a single digital footprint has been released. Sources familiar with the investigation say the logs aren't just sensitive, they're explosive. Rumor has it that 2 unauthorized entries occurred that afternoon, one before the shooting, 1 minute after, but the university hasn't confirmed a thing. Construction workers weren't on the schedule, and the only regular access belonged to a maintenance supervisor, who's since gone on indefinite leave. We're left with a puzzle that only gets more complicated the longer it sits in daylight. Kirk's podcast, now a eulogized juggernaut, spins up daily tribute shows featuring former Fox hosts, senators, even Vice President J.D. Vance. Each new guest brings their own theory. Foreign intrigue, deep state power grabs, old grudges gone nuclear. Meanwhile, Tucker Carlson stands at Kirk's funeral and invokes historical betrayals, while Bill Ackman, billionaire and supposed puppet master in Owen's narrative, posts his own cordial texts with Kirk to prove there was never a threat. The FBI issues denials, then launches new initiatives, all while refusing to answer a single direct question about the second shooter, the bullet casings, or those construction crews with an uncanny sense of timing.
I don't want to ever celebrate somebody losing their TV show. I think the outrage over somebody losing their TV show should be dwarfed by the outrage over somebody losing their life, over a decent, God-fearing, wonderful, lovely person trying to have conversation.
The grief is real, the outrage is real, but so is the sense that every official answer is delivered with a wink and a prayer that nobody looks too closely at the man behind the curtain. Now, as pressure mounts on every front, political, financial, legal, one line keeps resurfacing, whispered from the podcast war rooms to the basement group chats. The FBI isn't just hiding a shooter, they're hiding who gave the order. The Trump administration just requested $58 million for security after Charlie Kirk's assassination, not to protect politicians, but to bury what Kirk knew. It's not speculation when the line item for executive and judicial protection is jammed through Congress, just as scrutiny on Kirk's organization, Turning Point USA, hits an all-time high. Insiders familiar with the request say the real target isn't the White House or Capitol Hill, but the network of digital trails and financial records that might tie Kirk's final days to something much larger and much more dangerous than a lone gunman narrative. It's a security surge that looks less like crisis response and more like operational cleanup.
Whenever the authority says something and not prod any further, we can't allow that to happen here. I won't allow that to happen here because this something terrible has traumatized the world, okay? And I feel as though when it comes to this, the media, the government, the talking heads, everyone is confusing us about what actually took place with.
That urgency makes a lot more sense when we follow the money. Kirk's September 2nd memo, only 8 days before the tragedy, named a brand new chief operating officer and greenlit an internal audit to investigate missing millions at TPUSA. 4 days later, Kirk was gone, shot on a college campus before he could testify at the board's quarterly review. The audit, now sealed by TPUSA's legal team, was rumored to focus on political donations routed through dark money groups, questionable event contracts, and, most damning of all, a pattern of foreign transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands. A source with knowledge of the audit tells us the numbers didn't add up, especially in the months after Kirk hosted controversial figures and shifted the organization's position on Israel. Someone was moving large sums under the radar, and Kirk was the first and last person to start pulling the thread.
She really is just the moment. The speech that she gave, everybody was just wowed by her. I felt my energy personally, like last night going into that, I was effectively like soaring in the air above the convention center, like a dragon above, waiting for Erica to just be like, fire. And I was just going to come down and swoop in out of nowhere. All the politicians, all the fake people, everyone was just going to be in that moment.
Candace Owens, never one to let a scandal walk by, claimed on her broadcast that hedge fund billionaire Bill Ackman and a group of Israeli-linked mega donors threatened Kirk personally in the days before the memo went public. Owens alleges the confrontation happened in the Hamptons, where Kirk was cornered by Ackman's attack dogs and warned to stand down on the audit or risk becoming an enemy of their cause. Ackman, for his part, denies everything, showing text messages with Kirk that look polite, even chummy. But then, if we've learned anything from the past decade of PR battles, it's that screenshots are easy and plausible deniability is cheaper than ever. The only hard evidence left behind are the bullet casings at the scene. One still inscribed with, "Oh Bella Ciao." That's not a 22-year-old's graffiti. That's a professional signature. The anti-fascist anthem, so carefully etched onto the metal, all but screams for attention from those who know its meaning. We're supposed to believe this was the work of a random loner, but every marker points to a job done by someone with a message to send and the resources to disappear when the job was finished.
I watched my friend get shot in the neck. Yeah, that's what happened. I just want to say that he was publicly executed again before the world. The question is why, right?
The political fallout since then has only gotten messier. J.D. Vance, now vice president, stepped in to host the Charlie Kirk show as a tribute, bringing the full weight of the White House's media machine to the podcast-grieving fan base. But that gesture, touching as it looked on camera, ran parallel to a corporate coup. Within hours of Kirk's tragedy, his widow Erica was installed as CEO of TPUSA, an appointment that blindsided even longtime staffers. According to a former board member, Erica's takeover was so fast it made heads spin, and the organization's entire media strategy changed overnight. On the record, TPUSA calls it business as usual. Off the record, employees talk about purged files, erased laptops, and a sudden spike in NDA demands for anyone close to the audit. Is this grief? A wife stepping up to save her husband's legacy? Or is it damage control, an emergency firewall thrown up before the real contents of Kirk's audit memo could surface? And we can't ignore the digital breadcrumbs either, especially those left on Discord. The night before the arrest, Tyler Robinson's messages to friends weren't just edgy memes or the twisted humor of someone under pressure. The line about his doppelganger isn't just self-deprecating. "Only if I get a cut," he replies, when another user jokes about turning him in for the FBI's $100,000 reward. But read between the lines. What sounds like sarcasm takes on a darker edge when combined with the roommate's police report, the eyewitness accounts of 2 people on the roof, and the fact that security footage from half the campus disappeared that same night. We're looking at the oldest trick in the playbook. A fall guy with a history of online radicalism dropped in the perfect place at the perfect time to take the hit while someone else walks free. And the FBI knows it. Multiple sources in federal law enforcement have let it slip that there was never a serious belief Robinson acted alone. They're just not allowed to say so until the narrative is locked down tight.
Toast. But she didn't call for war. Erica did not call for war. In fact, she did the exact opposite, which is what was so stunning. It was unbelievable. The forgiveness that she granted, the strength that it took for her to call for that forgiveness, it's just unmatched, and it really made a difference. And I was being serious when I tweeted that I think it was the most consequential speech in American history.
Now comes the final twist that nobody wants to talk about on the record. The construction crew, spotted on the roof 2 days after the tragedy, wasn't repairing storm damaged or upgrading Wi-Fi cables. They were removing cameras. Specifically, the set of high-definition security cams recently installed as part of a campus safety initiative funded by, you guessed it, the TPUSA Alumni Donor Network. Facility logs, quietly amended a week later, show that the crew spent 4 hours in the mechanical penthouse, the small room where all campus camera feeds are stored. A former security manager told us, "There's no reason to wipe footage unless you've got something you don't want out in the wild." Local police haven't answered follow-up questions. University PR keeps insisting the cleanup was routine. But surveillance contractors from Provo to Salt Lake are privately telling clients to keep copies of everything, just in case the federal subpoenas start flying. Behind all these threads, the sense of a controlled burn is impossible to miss. The entire story has been managed with military precision, from the reward posters and press conferences to the parade of official denials and leaks that steer attention just far enough from the most inconvenient facts. We watch as news cycles pivot between grief and outrage, as podcasts battle for control of the narrative, as Kirk's political enemies and so-called allies all rush to claim a piece of his legacy. But nobody seems willing to touch the most obvious question of all. If this was a random act, why erase the cameras, rewrite the access logs, and push through a $58 million security request that looks suspiciously like hush money for the bureaucratic class?
All right, you guys, we're going to jump right into this with no introduction. There's a lot that I would like to speak with you guys about. Can't wait to hear your feedback. A lot of lies that are being put out there, narratives that I would say are half-truths or just misrepresentations entirely.
So where does this leave us? Any closer to answers, or just deeper in the labyrinth? They didn't just silence Charlie Kirk, they erased the evidence. And the question isn't who pulled the trigger, but who paid for the bullet? What do you think is hiding behind all the official stories? Who stands to gain the most from wiping the slate clean? Drop your theory in the comments and tell us what you see that nobody else will say out loud. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and remember, in a world this twisted, the truth is the one thing they never want you to find.